You know, I'm trying to stick with the once a week thing right now due to life stuff as I kind of mentioned in my post, but this is such a momentous occasion that I need to break that right now because a new Hannibal video from Historymarche is dropped. And as you guys know, Hannibal Barca is my favorite military commander of all time. And you know, this is the timing of this drop for this video is actually kind of amazing because right now I currently am wearing sunglasses because I got a sty in my left eye right here, so I can't like open it. For the past few days, I've been kind of like keeping it closed, so I've been kind of like one-eyed, like good old Hanny. And I'm also in my. I also started recently a Total War, a new playthrough as I've been playing as Carthage. Funnily enough, around the same time I lost, well, I didn't lose my eye, but around the same time this sty grew on my eye, so I have to keep it closed. So, like, I don't know, it's fun. I play against Carthage, lost eye, and then here Hannibal is. If you ask me, that's a sign. Maybe it was a sign that of Historymarche dropping a new Hannibal series. So I'm really happy to see this back and get more Hannibal Barca because I know I keep harping on this, but he really is my favorite military commander of all time. He's the only individual I ever rooted for over Rome. In fact, I wanted him to beat Rome. But you know, because I'm just a big fan of the guy. And yeah, again, like I said, I'm mainly posting once every Monday-ish. That's kind of the new schedule I've been going with because as you guys know, I've been having a lot of life problems, but like, you know, I'm willing to make exceptions when Oversimplified drops and when the new Hannibal Barca video drops because like, you know, and whatever they be. So, yeah, I'm really excited to get into this. I don't want to waste too much time. If you want to watch the original video by Historymarche, I'll make sure to put the link down in the description down below. And if you enjoy my channel and you want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to please like, comment, subscribe, and maybe consider becoming a Patreon member. It's only for $1 and you get early access and whatnot. So let me see, is everything working? Okay. Without any further ado, let's do.
The spring of 212 BC brought no thaw to the terror gripping the Roman Republic. In the south, the unthinkable had happened. The great jewel of Magna Graecia, Tarentum, had fallen to Hannibal. Yet, by a razor's edge, a desperate Roman garrison still clung to the city's citadel. For the Roman Senate, the dread was paralyzing. That single fortress was the only thing standing between the Republic and potential annihilation. If the starving garrison broke, Tarentum's massive deep-water harbor would open and bring a tidal wave of fresh Carthaginian veterans from Africa and the terrifying phalanxes of King Philip V of Macedon.
Dude, luckily for Roman, Macedon and Carthage proved to be useless allies to Hannibal, so they never really had much to worry about. Well, yeah, I am kind of joking around. The way the Romans dealt with the Macedonians was actually ingenious, using the Greek city-states to rebel against Macedon, so Macedon had to waste time fighting the Greeks. As you all know, the Greeks love fighting each other, so that was genius. But Carthage, yeah, they were kind of just useless the entire Second War, huh?
Rome was barely surviving a war of attrition. A fully reinforced Hannibal was a nightmare the Republic could not withstand. But for Hannibal, the incomplete victory at Tarentum was agonizing. He held the city streets, but without the harbor, his strategic grand design was paralyzed. He remained dangerously isolated, his irreplaceable army slowly bleeding out. The clock was ticking. Now, unlike the Romans, most of us don't need to worry about Hannibal marching into our street with his elephants, but modern life comes with it. Hannibal's main objective in the spring of 212 BC was to make Tarentum his base of operations and the main hub of Carthage's war effort in Italy. Though he managed to take the city, the Roman garrison under Marcus Livius Macatus retreated to the highly defensible citadel, guarding the harbor entrance. Hannibal built siege works to isolate them, but could not take the citadel, which meant that he could not use the port to receive provisions and reinforcements from Carthage. Hannibal knew—
It's so shocking to me that throughout the entire war, the only, effort that the Carthaginians gave to Hannibal was, 4,000 Numidian cavalry out of, 20 years of war. To me, that's still, one of the most insane things ever. Holy crap.
Knew that Rome's navy dominated the Tyrrhenian Sea and the waters around Sicily. But he now controlled almost the entire coastline of southern Italy. Capturing Tarentum would have made it difficult for the Roman fleet to patrol the vast stretch of water between Sicily and Brundisium without a safe port in between. This, in turn, would have enabled the Carthaginian fleet to sail from Africa in a wider arc around Malta and towards Tarentum without hindrance, and establish a steady stream of supplies and troops. And, more importantly, it would have potentially allowed Hannibal's ally, King Philip V of Macedon, to land his phalanxes in Italy to open a true second front against Rome. But in the Carthaginian Senate, learning that the Roman garrison bravely held out in the citadel was music to the ears of the anti-Barcid faction.
These
Despite
losers.
representing a minority in the Senate, the anti-Barcid faction, led by Hanno II the Great—
Why is he called the Great? WTF? That's the one. This is there's some. When I think of people who are called the Great, I always kind of have a image of winners, like Alexander, or Peter, or Frederick, and then I've come across people called the Great who ultimately lost, Antiochus, and then there's this dude, Hanno. I'm just I'm sorry, I'm such a big Hanno hater because he messes with my boy Hannibal. His efforts to screw over Hannibal has made him my immortal enemy, my most hated historical figure that I've ever seen on this channel's history. I can't stand the guy. I hate that he's called the Great. He does not deserve that title. I'm sorry, that's just a... Sorry.
were able to block the sending of reinforcements and supplies to Hannibal by arguing that the lack of a safe, deep water harbor in Italy would put the Carthaginian ships, troops, and provisions at risk. This was exactly the political ammunition Hanno needed. He represented the wealthy agrarian aristocracy of North Africa and opposed the war in Italy in favor of territorial expansion in Africa and maintaining lucrative trade relations with Rome. The pro-Barcid faction, despite holding the political mandate with the support of the Carthaginian Popular Assembly and a coalition of mercantile elites, needed a deep water port firmly under Hannibal's control to win the argument against Hanno in the Senate. Tarentum was that perfect port. For now, Hannibal was on his own.
Like always.
The fall of Tarentum was a massive strategic blow for Rome. The garrison in the citadel stood firm, but how long could they hold out? If the citadel fell, Hannibal would gain a major logistical hub that could turn the war irreversibly into Carthage's favor. The Roman Senate went on the offensive. Consuls Quintus Fulvius Flaccus and Appius Claudius Pulcher were tasked with subduing Campania, specifically the defected city of Capua. Marcus Claudius Marcellus was still in Sicily. His command extended due to the siege of Syracuse.
Which we covered.
Fearing Macedon reinforcements should Tarentum fall, Rome sent Praetor Marcus Valerius Livinus to open diplomatic channels with the Aetolian League. His task was to form an alliance aimed at pinning down Philip in Greece. by late spring.
Again, that was a genius move, by the way. Like, I joke, like, yeah, Macedon proved a useless ally through the Second Punic War, but in all fairness, they did get pinned down in Greece because the Romans used a great form of diplomatic warfare to get the city-states here to fight against Macedon, so that was really just smart of Rome.
Consuls Flaccus and Appius marched into Campania and began requisitioning grain to build massive supply depots in preparation for a long siege of Capua. With multiple Roman consular armies closing in, the Capuans lacked the grain required to survive a long siege and sent a desperate plea to Hannibal for provisions. Hannibal, busy operating in southern Italy, dispatched his trusted lieutenant and nephew Hanno to gather supplies and deliver them to Capua before the Romans could fully encircle the city. Hanno marched his army north from Bruttium, successfully evading Roman patrols, and arrived near Beneventum. Hanno established a highly defensible fortified camp on a steep hill outside of Beneventum. He instructed the Capuans to send wagons and beasts of burden to his camp so the supplies could be transported back to their city.
These meals changed everything for
Gosh
me.
darn
I'll
it.
admit it, I was skeptical about ready-to-eat meals, but then I tried.
Meanwhile, Hanno spent several days stripping the surrounding countryside of grain and gathering provisions from local Samnite tribes allied with Carthage. However, the Capuans were disorganized and incredibly slow to act, sending only a fraction of the required wagons. This fatal delay gave Roman loyalists in the area time to send word to the Roman consul Flaccus, who was stationed nearby.
Oh boy.
Hanno chose wise to set his camp on a steep, highly defensible hill. However, his primary mission was not to fight a pitched battle, but to gather immense amounts of grain for a starving Capua. To do this, he had to strip the surrounding countryside bare. This meant that his army could not sit safely inside the fort. The vast majority of Hanno's battle-hardened Carthaginian soldiers were scattered miles away across the countryside
Oh
gathering
my
food,
goodness.
leaving the camp severely under-defended by a skeleton crew. Supplies flowed in quickly. Local Samnite tribes allied to Hannibal sent all the grain they could, and the Roman allied countryside was plundered. The Capuans, however, were sluggish and disorganized. Their failure to arrive on time forced Hanno to remain stationary in his camp much longer than he had anticipated. Any commander worth his salt knows that lingering in enemy territory in one place is incredibly dangerous, as it gives the enemy time to locate you and mobilize.
Yeah.
When the Capuans finally did arrive, it created a massive logistical nightmare. Most of Hanno's troops were rotating on foraging missions far from the camp. So this sudden influx of thousands of untrained civilians, farmers and drivers, mixed with panicking pack animals, oxen and hundreds of wooden carts, turned a well-ordered military fort into a crowded, chaotic bazaar. The gates were likely obstructed by carts. The defensive perimeters were cluttered. The defenders were distracted, trying to organize the convoy. Worse, Beneventum was a Latin colony and fiercely loyal to Rome. By setting up camp near the city, Hanno was operating in a heavily populated area filled with Roman sympathizers.
Holy crap. This is like such an awful position. At this point, he's gonna have to just straight up leave, right? Like, it's either that or... what are the options? Like, Hanno seems to... we have, I think, he has appeared in this series, and he seems like a pretty good hand to Hannibal. So he doesn't strike me as dumb, you know? And it seems like he's probably smart enough to realize how bad the situation is getting. and that there's only going to be two options now. It's either A, he's going to have to just get out at this point and leave the city to its fate because of just how awful things are going, or B, he's going to try to, like, I guess maybe defend, but I don't know, dude. That seems like, I don't know. We haven't really seen any Carthaginians minus Hannibal actually like prevail against the Romans in any type of battle, so yeah. Or I guess the third option is the Romans are going to catch him off guard and manage to do damage. I feel like those three are the three options.
The locals were well aware of Hanno's presence, the scattered foragers, and the arrival of the massive, clumsy Capuan convoy. They easily smuggled this intelligence out to Flaccus.
Oh no.
By now, the Roman consul was not far from Beneventum.
Oh my gosh.
The defining factor was his decisive action. Upon receiving the intelligence from the locals of Beneventum, Flaccus did not wait for his co-consul or march at a standard pace. He ordered his men to leave all their heavy baggage behind to
they're gonna
increase
get
their
jumped.
speed, and executed a grueling night march.
Holy crap, are they gonna get jumped? Yeah, I think the third option I just said might be the one. They're gonna get caught off guard, and I guess they're gonna lose a lot of manpower.
Arriving precisely at the break of dawn,
Holy
Flaccus
crap.
achieved total tactical surprise. He struck the camp without delay when it was at its most disorganized, packed with Capuan civilians, and before Hanno had any time to recall his scattered foragers from the countryside. But Hanno had positioned his camp on a steep, elevated hill, ringed by heavy wooden palisades and a trench. To reach the defenders, the highly armored Roman legionaries had to charge uphill over broken, steep ground. Despite being caught off guard and severely undermanned, with most of the Carthaginian army still out foraging, the garrison that remained fought tenaciously. They rained down javelins, stones, and arrows from the ramparts. The steep incline meant the Romans could barely throw their own pila with any force, let alone lock shields to break down the walls.
Man, at least Hanno's, like, positioning of his camp seems to be the only saving grace at the moment, huh? Like, he chose a good place for defense, at least, but I don't know, man, the Romans are dogged.
This first wave of the Roman assault was a bloodbath. Casualties mounted rapidly as soldiers slipped on the steep incline and were cut down.
Holy crap.
Seeing the futile slaughter and recognizing the strength of the camp's position, Flaccus ordered his trumpeters to sound the retreat. He planned to wait for his co-consul Appius to arrive with a second army the next day to surround the hill properly.
This is
Wow.
your ship. Yeah,
Gosh darn
not
it.
even close. This is your ship.
Alright, like, holy crap. Good on Hanno. That's a pretty good first part of the defense, but we're still not done yet.
What happened next was a classic example of Roman military culture, where the aggressive momentum of the rank and file and junior officers overrode the caution of their commander. As the recall sounded, a commander named Vibius Acaus, leading a unit of Polignium allies, Italian troops fighting for Rome, refused to fall back. To force his men forward, he grabbed the unit's military standard and hurled it violently over the Carthaginian palisade into the enemy camp.
Oh my god.
Losing a standard was the ultimate military disgrace, punishable by decimation. Roaring, the Polignian troops charged furiously back up the hill, desperate to reclaim it. Seeing the Polignians renewing the attack, a Roman military tribune named Valerius Flaccus, leading the 3rd Legion, ordered his own men forward, shouting that it would be a humiliation to let the Allied troops take the camp, while Roman citizens retreated. Spurred by a mix of shame and adrenaline, the Roman and Allied soldiers ignored the recall orders. They surged up the hill simultaneously. The Polignians hacked through the wooden gates, while the 3rd Legion managed to scale the ramparts.
Holy crap, now it's done
Once
now.
the Romans breached the walls, the battle shifted from a tactical siege into a chaotic massacre. The interior of the camp was a death trap for the defenders. The camp was packed with over 2,000 Capuan wagons, civilian drivers, and terrified beasts of burden. As the Romans poured in, the animals panicked, trampling people and blocking the escape routes. The unarmored Capuan civilians were entirely defenseless against Roman legionaries. The Carthaginians could not form up into disciplined ranks within the cluttered, chaotic confines of the camp.
Oh
The
my
Romans
god.
systematically slaughtered
Yeah, this is just a slaughter now. Wow, holy crap.
anyone in their path. Carthaginian soldiers, Capuan wagon drivers, and camp followers alike. Livy reports that 3,000 troops and over 3,000 non-combatants were killed, though the chaos made exact counts difficult. Hanno was miles away with his foraging parties when he received word that the camp had fallen. Realizing his supply base, his wagons, and a chunk of his army were destroyed, he made no attempt to counterattack. He immediately gathered his remaining foragers and marched south towards Bruttium, abandoning Capua to its fate. The Romans captured the camp intact, along with a staggering amount of loot. They seized over 7,000 prisoners, massive stockpiles of grain, herds of livestock, and all the wagons the Capuans had managed to scrounge together. Following the disastrous defeat at Beneventum, Capua's situation went from desperate to critical. Hannibal had no choice but to intervene personally.
Yeah, that's a big thing with Hannibal later on. Like after usually there's like 2 phases of Hannibal. There's the first phase of the war where he's like, you know, just wreaking havoc upon the Romans. It usually ends after the Battle of Cannae, and then from Cannae after Cannae onward, that's usually the decline as Rome switches its strategic approaches in dealing with Hannibal, and that's usually like the decline. And a big part of it, it's really the allies. Like before, Hannibal didn't have to worry about defending anybody. He just needed to survive on his own. The thing is, he wanted a lot of Italian but a lot of Italian groups to essentially turn on the Romans, and he did get that right here, but that came with a really huge burden, and that was just him having to now march up and down southern Italy just to keep defending these allies, right? And like that kind of hampers his own movements, as he's no longer dictating the course. He no longer has the momentum in areas, or he's no longer can take the initiative like before, because the Romans can take the initiative by forcing Hannibal's hand to have to go and defend his own allies. So like it kind of like does bog down Hannibal, and you can see that. You know, like Hannibal is such an interesting person when it comes to the Romans, because he understands the Romans in a way very few of their enemies ever did. But his understanding of the Romans only extends to a tactical way. Like, he can lure the Romans into traps. He can beat them in pitched battles. He knows how to, like, prey on their hot-headedness and whatnot. Like, he understands the Roman psyche, but only to a tactical degree. Like, in a strategic sense, Hannibal doesn't get them. And what I mean by that is, like I say, he knows how to beat them in battles, but in a war, like, I've often read that Hannibal's, like, strategic sense was never to destroy Rome. He wanted to beat Rome. He wanted to isolate the Romans. Like, you know, he kind of essentially shrink down the Romans, because the Romans at this point, we often think, yeah, they just had... the entire Italian peninsula is, you know, Romans, Italians, but it's a bit more diverse than that. Like Magna Graecia down here, southern Italy, for a long time was under Greek control. Like the Greek city-state of Tarentum was kind of the head honcho around here. And it wasn't until after the Pyrrhus Wars that the Romans conquered and solidified southern Italy. So southern Italy still has plenty of native like Greeks and groups that were just like not too long ago conquered by the Romans. There's also the Samnites, and so like the Italian peninsula, while under the Roman banner, was forged through conquest, and there's still other groups in it that you know, aren't fully Roman in a sense, if you get what I mean. So it's more like a confederation. I don't think that's the right word, but basically something held together by the Roman banner. And so Hannibal wanted to kind of break that and get all these other Italian groups to kind of turn on Rome, essentially shrink Rome and then isolate it. But to Rome's credit, they kept the majority of the Italian peninsula under their banner, and not as many defected towards Hannibal as I think he wanted to defect to him. And those that did defect to him were more of a hindrance, as we're seeing, right? Because they can't really defend themselves, and they need Hannibal to constantly come and bail them out. So again, like yeah, in a strategic sense, it's funny because there's the famous story, right, where Hannibal and Scipio are talking, and then Hannibal names like the 3 greatest military commanders. He names Alexander the Great, and then he names Pyrrhus of Epirus. So he was aware of Pyrrhus of Epirus. Pyrrhus of Epirus, it's has a lot of similarities with Hannibal Barca. In a sense, both were Rome's enemies. Both defeated Rome tactically in their battles, but failed to grasp the strategic sense because, again, what Hannibal didn't seem to fully gain from that, despite being aware of Pyrrhus, is that the Romans don't surrender. The Romans will never surrender, especially at this point in history. The Romans will literally die until the last man, and they will never surrender. They will never make a truce or a peace treaty where they're the losers. You know, they want total victory. And Hannibal didn't seem to realize that. He thought maybe if I beat them enough, isolate them enough, kill enough of them, they'll submit. But even he was caught off guard by the Roman perseverance, that despite losing over 100,000 men personally to Hannibal, yeah, they wouldn't surrender. So he was a bit strategically, like I said, he understands them in a tactical sense to win battles, but in a strategic sense, I don't think he didn't fully get them, that they would never, you know, surrender. So there was his strategic way of approaching things was, you know, I've just joked often, if you want to go to war with Rome, you have to go into a genocide route. You need to enter a war with Rome wanting to commit genocide. I'm not saying I approve of genocide, but you know how the Romans locked in the Third Punic War? It's like, we need to destroy Carthage. That should have been like Hannibal's approach, because he was not seemingly hell-bent on the genocide route, and that's probably the only way you can approach a war with Rome at this point. Like, you have to be ready to just kill every Roman you can get your hands on, because that's the only way. Even then, I'm not saying he would win, but like that's probably the only way you can approach it, because the Romans will never actually make peace, even if you beat them enough, you know? So yeah, like that's just something that always interested me. Hannibal understood Rome to beat them, but he did not understand them in a strategic sense, that the Romans would never actually give up. So, like I said, I've been playing Total War Rome 2 as of late. Like, I recently did a Carthaginian playthrough, and like, holy crap, like the Romans were a thorn on my side, and it sucks because once the Romans are your enemies in the game, they never actually make peace. Like, Total War Rome 2 is so historically accurate, because once the Romans are pissed off at you and declare war on you, you can never make peace. So, like, it was hard fighting the Romans. I kind of understood Hannibal's plight. Like, I can't make peace with these guys, you know? Yeah.
Abandoning attempts to take the citadel at Tarentum, he left his heavy baggage and slower troops behind. Taking a highly mobile strike force of his best veteran infantry.
Yeah, again, this is a bit of an iffy situation, right? Like, arguably Tarentum would probably be more important to just take because of the port's importance and getting allies across, but Hannibal has no choice but to keep defending his allies or risk more defection, right? Or else he'll just lose all of this. So again, this is a tough situation for Hannibal. Was it right? I mean, I don't know. We're gonna have to see more of it. But like, my head is like, dude, at this point, just focus on just Tarentum and getting that. But again, I know this is a tough situation on both. There's drawbacks to each side. One, lessening the noose around Tarentum's neck gives them more time to keep holding on, and therefore, you know, you won't be getting your supplies, but at the same time, abandoning Capua will make other people think, oh, Hannibal sucks, he doesn't defend his allies, and then that'll create mass or give the Romans more opportunity to take it. So I feel like you're gonna lose either way, right? Whatever decision he makes is just like, I'm thinking, like, which is better in a strategic sense? A part of me, I don't know why, part of me is feeling like maybe just stick and try to get the Citadel from Tarentum, but, again, I understand. Like I said, I think it's a lose-lose situation, whatever, but Hannibal needs to do what he needs to do.
And his dreaded Numidian cavalry, he executed a rapid forced march.
Dude, I know, I've been using the Numidian cavalry, and bro, I'm like in love with them, because before my Carthage Let's Play, I mainly only played as like the successor kingdoms, you know, Macedon, the Seleucid Empire, the Ptolemaic Egypt, Bactria. Basically, I've only played as Pike because I'm a huge fan of Pikes, as you guys know, so I only been playing as these guys in Total War Rome 2. My recent Carthage Let's Play, it's the first time I got out of using Pikes and used a finally different faction, non-Hellenistic Greek faction. And bro, like, I had to, like, I'm in love with Carthage units. Like, a lot of my army is just mercenaries, though, but, like, the Numidian cavalry are so in clutch. Like, I always love using them to divert, scatter enemies. They do so much damage through projectiles, and they're hard to catch. I understand, like, that's just actually, I've used them to defeat the Romans so many times. The Numidian cavalry truly is the MVP of the Hannibal Carthage army. Like, those units are the MVP.
Towards Campania. Meanwhile, the Roman consuls Flaccus and Appius marched their combined armies into Campania, intent on fully encircling the rebellious city and starving it into submission. Hannibal bypassed the Roman patrols and established his fortified camp on Mount Tifata, a steep, defensible ridge situated just a few miles east of Capua. This gave him the high ground overlooking the Roman siege camps on the plains below. But he did not bring his army into the camp. Instead, the Carthaginian general, perhaps spotting a weakness in the Roman ranks, immediately went on the offensive. Hannibal deployed his veteran infantry and his dreaded Numidian and heavy Iberian cavalry and advanced to face the Romans head-on.
My goodness. The Romans seem to be positioning themselves for a battle too. I'm a little surprised because I'm pretty sure that the Fabian strategy was kind of like, after Cannae, a lot of the Romans kind of stopped giving Hannibal pitched battles, right? And for good reason. They basically defer to the Fabian strategy and instead of fighting Hannibal, they're gonna fight everybody but Hannibal. So I'm a bit surprised to see the Romans actually positioning for a battle at the moment. Like, are they actually gonna go through with it? Because this is actually what Hannibal would want.
The flat open plains of Campania were ideal for cavalry maneuvers, giving Hannibal a clear terrain advantage.
Oh my gosh.
The two consular armies drew up in a standard Roman battle formation, the triplex Acies, on the plains outside the city. Hannibal's heavy cavalry and his agile Numidian light cavalry barreled down on the Roman and allied horsemen. The Numidians dispersed, peeling off on the Roman far wing, harassing the Roman allied cavalry, and moving to envelop them on 3 sides.
Oh my gosh. Again, just like the nimbleness of the Numidians is so in clutch. The way they can harass you and go around you, like, they are quick. Like, when I'm using them in Total War Rome 2, yeah, they are fast. Like, I'm actually sometimes surprised at how easily I'm able to flank or get behind enemy units through my Numidians.
Hannibal's Iberian cavalry, meanwhile, engaged the Roman horse. Vastly more experienced, the Iberians quickly gained the upper hand. Operating in closely knit squadrons, they pushed their way among the Roman ranks and disrupted their lines. Roman cavalry on both wings was rapidly outmaneuvered, overwhelmed, and driven from the field, leaving the Roman infantry flanks exposed.
Oh my gosh.
By now, the Libyan and Iberian infantry closed in and crashed into the Roman line. Then, Hannibal sprung his trap.
Oh my gosh.
He signaled the Capuan garrison to sally out from the city and attack the Romans from the rear.
Oh my gosh.
Though few in number, this action...
He is trying to envelop them. And yeah, even though few in number, I'm imagining this is still going to cause havoc among the Roman lines if they find out they're still being attacked from the rear and that their cavalry's units. This is how you defeat the Romans. Like, the Romans, I've often said, the Romans' cavalry game was really lacking until, like, the crisis of the 3rd century. I feel like the crisis of the 3rd century, when Emperor Gallienus merged the Roman army into a one giant more mobile, heavily cavalry force. That's like when the Romans stepped up their cavalry game and seemed to really like use it to go on and win a lot of battles and move quickly. Before that, the main Roman strength, it seems, was really just their infantry. Like, they really put a lot in their infantry, and yeah, in an infantry battle, the Romans are usually going to come out on top, like, 9 times out of 10. But this is how you beat them, because their cavalry game is so weak at this point. At least, well, maybe weak's too strong of a war, too harsh of a word. More like not as strong as their infantry. Let's go with that. And if you defeat the Roman cavalry, you essentially can just envelop or just render their infantry beyond weak. From the flanks. And we've seen that several times. Like, with Pyrrhus of Epirus, he often would win the cavalry sides and threaten to envelop the Romans. Or, like, even, like, when the Romans fight the successor states, like with the Seleucid Empire. Like, even Antiochus managed to wreck the Romans with his cavalry. But he didn't capitalize on it. Point is, cavalry is the only way you're gonna beat the Romans, you know? That's the trick. I feel like Hannibal fully got and mastered.
Further threw the Romans off balance. The Roman legions fought fiercely against Hannibal's veteran infantry in the center, but the attack from one flank by the Iberian cavalry and the incessant harassment by the Numidian riders on the other, along with the attack from the Capuan garrison, began to take a heavy toll.
On all fronts, they're fighting.
The Roman lines began to buckle under the pressure of fighting on all sides in the open field against a superior tactical commander. A complete collapse of the Roman army seemed imminent. Just as the battle was reaching a critical breaking point and the Roman rout appeared inevitable, a massive cloud of dust appeared on the horizon, moving rapidly toward the battlefield. Out of the dust emerged a fresh force of cavalry. Neither side knew who they were. The Romans panicked and began fleeing, believing it was Hanno returning from southern Italy with his remaining troops. Hannibal did not pursue.
Dang. I'm wondering if it's actually just Roman reinforcements and they got scared of their own guys. That would suck.
And cautiously retreated towards his camp, suspecting that a fresh Roman army, perhaps the Praetorian forces from the south, arrived to aid the consuls. As the fighting abruptly stopped and both armies withdrew, the identity of the approaching cavalry force was revealed. It was the Roman quaestor Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus. He was leading the remnants of an army that had recently been commanded by Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus, who had been ambushed and killed earlier that year. The battle, thus, resulted in a draw. However, the Romans suffered far heavier casualties and clearly lost.
Yeah, I know it's considered a draw, but man, was that a lucky break for the Romans, because they were getting. It is so awesome. I love watching Hannibal at work because he's such a master on the battlefield. When you watch other commanders of the time, like Carthaginians, fight the Romans, it feels so one-sided, like the Romans are gonna always come out on top. It's like, I don't know, it's just like the skill level, like Hannibal's on a completely different like league as a commander compared to everyone else. It's like just watching like the way that entire thing played out with the infantry battle, the cavalry wings effortlessly like winning. It's like just watching a master at work. I'm like at awe. I don't know how to put it. I'm just glazing Hannibal because, I love Hannibal, but it's just watching a master, a tactical genius at work. It's just, I love watching the man work, bro. He's like just on another level.
The tactical engagement. That night in the Roman camp, consuls Flaccus and Appius held a war council. They made a sobering but brilliant strategic realization. They could not beat Hannibal in a pitched battle on the plains of Campania. If they stayed, Hannibal would eventually destroy them. To save their armies, the consuls executed a strategic withdrawal under the cover of darkness. They split their forces and marched in opposite directions.
Yeah, it's the way that Hannibal put the fear of God in the Romans. Because, I feel like the Romans before Hannibal probably wouldn't would have kept trying to fight. You know what I mean? Like, the Romans pre-Hannibal were definitely more bullheaded in a sense and much more willing to just keep going. But I feel like after Hannibal and especially Cannae, like they're not above like, okay, maybe we can not fight anymore. Like before Rome, like we'll keep fighting and fighting in a sense, like in a tactical sense, but now they're more willing to not engage, more willing to like pull off strategic withdrawals instead of thinking it's cowardly. Like, no, we can do this, it's fine. I think it's just telling of how much fear Hannibal put in them, right? Like they were like, holy crap, this guy will literally murder us if we stay. This is why I love Hannibal, bro. It's just like, he's the only man, like no, there are other enemies of Rome, but like, he's like, I think he's like Rome's greatest enemy. Like the way he like forever altered the Romans is kind of amazing. Like he gave them eternal PTSD. Like they never forgot Hannibal,
Flaccus went toward the coast, while Appius moved south towards Lucania. This, they calculated, would force Hannibal to leave Capua and chase them, thereby saving the Roman armies to fight another day. I appreciate you being here for the video. Please.
Okay, Tarentum's wealth, which Hannibal desperately wanted to tap to, was largely based on its production of Tyrian purple dye harvested from local Myrrhexy nails. Despite Hannibal's opposition, the Carthaginian Popular Assembly heavily supported Hannibal. As part of his war booty was sent back to the citizens. Yep. Mount Tifata, where Hannibal placed his camp, was sacred to the goddess Diana and featured a massive temple complex. Toli, which the Romans fortified as a supply depot, was eventually grown into a primary commercial port for the entire Roman Empire before Ostia was expanded. The Pelagians, who Fabius led, were not Latins. They were an Oscan-speaking mountain tribe from central Italy, fiercely loyal to the Roman alliance. So yeah, that was awesome. Another great series of watching the Romans. I really enjoyed it, guys, and I can't wait for the next time. Whenever the next Hannibal part should drop, I'll drop everything in my life to go do it, to go watch it. So I'll end the video right here, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.